A lot of people have been killed in this small area. We counted 35 people. The two shoes of another person who has been executed. And there is pieces of clothes here. You see the traces of the bodies and the blood.
How many houses were here?
It is no secret that the more time passes, the harder it is to get the real story about what happened. Partially because people forget, and partially because the governments are now getting increasingly more sophisticated in hiding the evidence. So the sooner we get on the ground, the sooner we can talk to the people, the sooner we can see the bullet marks on the walls, the more clear and detailed information we can get.
They put them like this? Down like this? Okay? Yeah. Then they put them like this.
We do our work on vast, complicated, difficult crime scenes where there's human rights fact finders.
Zip tie. They used it to tie his hands.
We go on the ground to establish exactly what kind of violations are being committed and who's committing them.
So were they killed inside the village or were they killed as they were fleeing?
That information then at the disposal of criminal investigators and prosecutors can be shaped into a case directed against an individual.
When I opened up Human Rights Watch's field office in Freetown, Sierra Leone in April 1999, it was difficult finding civilians who had not either been a witness to or a victim of a war crime.
Former Liberian leader Charles Taylor is on trial in The Hague for war crimes committed during Sierra Leone's 11-year civil war. He's accused of selling diamonds and buying weapons for Sierra Leone's Revolutionary United Front, or RUF. The RUF were notorious for hacking off the hands and legs of civilians during their decade-long war, and for the abduction of children and forcing them to become child soldiers.
Charles Taylor supported the Revolutionary United Front with full knowledge of the very serious atrocities that they were committing. Sierra Leoneans never expected for justice to be done. They were used to the powerful, the big men getting away literally with murder.
The Special Court for Sierra Leone is sitting for a hearing in the case of the prosecutor versus Charles Ganke Taylor.
People appear to have been targeted at random. They were killed in churches, in mosques, in houses where they were sheltering. They were, including children, including infants, were thrown into burning fires. There was widespread and systematic sexual abuse against.
You can only be found guilty on the basis of evidence. And Corinne Dufka, the Human Rights Watch researcher in the midst of the Sierra Leone war, very bravely was on the ground collecting that evidence. Without it, it would not have been possible to prosecute Charles Taylor and to convict him in a court of law.
The trial chamber unanimously finds you guilty of aiding and abetting the commission of the following crimes. Count 1, acts of terrorism. Count 2, murder. Count 3, violence to life. Count 4, rape. Count 5, sexual slavery.
Human Rights Watch is known for the rigor of our investigations. We collect evidence in a way that simply cannot be refuted. It provides an airtight case for prosecution.
They found people underneath this plate. We speak to hundreds of witnesses and victims.
Did they identify the bodies before burying them?
We visit hospitals, morgues, where you can get a lot of information about the nature of injuries, the cause of death. We visit the scene of the crime.
What is that? Is it from the bomb?
To take photographs to analyze the damage. And then we have a team of military experts who can tell you exactly what type of weapon shot that type of shell. We also use satellite imagery, and putting it together with the witness testimonies, we'll have a very full picture of what happened. get a full story about what's happening in northern Syria, where the attacks against civilian population were just horrendous, we had to go in. After trying to push the Syrian government to let us in for many, many months, we finally decided to go in unofficially. We heard reports about executions that happened in Idlib province, one of the opposition strongholds. Syrian troops would enter the house, they would separate men from women, and then line them against the wall and shoot them dead, one after another, one after another. We talked to a mother whose 3 sons were basically taken out of the house one morning, and a few hours later, she found their bodies in the street right outside of her house. In 5 different towns in northern Idlib, we documented executions, arbitrary detention and torture, and destruction and burning of civilian property, war crimes committed by the Syrian army.
Human Rights Watch says there is clear evidence that Syria has breached international law.
We were in northern Syria, and all the leads pointed to a massive campaign of violence by Syrian government forces and pro-government militias.
What's absolutely clear from this report is that torture is widespread and systematic.
Human Rights Watch maps out dozens of detention facilities where prisoners say they've been routinely tortured.
Human Rights Watch put out a similar report much earlier than the UN report. How do you do the actual evidence gathering?
We've been working on Syria for years, so we have an extensive network of activists, human rights activists whom we know personally, whom we trust, who are keen in helping us identify.
Once we have the evidence that atrocities were committed, our aim is not simply to expose the information, our aim is to generate the political pressure to stop the killing, and at the very least, to bring the perpetrators to justice.
And now from Oslo by Jan Egeland from Human Rights Watch. Jan Egeland, your words are very strong. You urge the UN Security Council to revoke Assad's license to kill. In effect, you're saying that the Security Council has given Assad a license to kill.
One of the problems is really that Assad feels that there is no unified pressure on him, that he's still being sold arms even.
The international community has a responsibility to protect the Syrian people. And frankly, right now, the problem is not what we call the international community. Right now, the problem is that Russia and China in the UN Security Council have been blocking significant action for months and months.
The only thing that is going to convince the international community, the Security Council, to put pressure on the Syrian government to end the violations is to report the truth, to get the facts out.
We're really putting them on notice that somebody will have to answer for these violations.
Violations that the Syrian government routinely denies. But the evidence being gathered in reports like this one by Human Rights Watch is being prepared for that day when the dust finally settles in Syria. A day when many hope those accused of crimes against humanity will be brought to justice before an international court of law.
Speaking to us is an act of incredible courage. One may say that these people have nothing to lose. They lost everything they have, and that's why they're willing to tell their story. But that's not true. People always have something to lose, including their own lives and their own freedom. But they understand that we are this link between their story and justice. And one of the most important things that is left for them is the hope for justice.